Hi everyone, Dave here. I hope you're all doing well. Thanks for coming along to another episode of Legends of the Spire. Now on the podcast this week, I've had a break from the players for a week to do our third Meet the Fan. I always find these really interesting to get memories from people from down the years of being a supporter. And this week I caught up with Liam Corry, who is living in Australia. So I thought it'd be really interesting to have a chat with someone about what it's like to be a Spireite on the other side of the planet, juggling things like very inconvenient game times and things like that. He started off watching Chesterfield around about the time of the playoff final in 1995, so a good time to become a Spireite. And then it's obviously had the really good times of things like FA Cup runs and title wins since then. So good to have a chat with him about his time supporting Chesterfield. If you're interested in being a Meet the Fan, then do get in touch. I'm on things like Twitter and Instagram at Spire Legends, Legends of the Spire on Facebook, and you can email legendsofthespire@outlook.com. So if you're interested in coming on, then do get in touch. I've had a few people get in touch, and I am getting round to them, so please bear with me while I find a bit of spare time to get them recorded. So here we are with our latest episode with a Meet the Fan with Liam Corry.
Legends of the Spire.
So I should say good evening, shouldn't I? Because
You should. It's 8 o'clock, so it's getting dark, and it's really rainy as well. So sort of a bit more of an English feel to things today.
oh, that's good. So what are you in at the moment? Is it spring?
It's spring, just coming into summer. So
Yeah, it's been a bit cold and miserable, but it's getting warm now. But that's sort of when it rains as well. So
yeah, it's getting better anyway. The evenings are brighter and all that sort of stuff. So
Do you find yourself acclimatized pretty quickly after you've moved over? Was it?
yeah, the first couple of
winters I thought were really warm, and it's been 6 years.
years now, and now I'm freezing in the winter. So I think if I was ever at home, I wouldn't be able to cope. Definitely. Yeah, it's the heat that's probably harder when it gets those sort of 40 plus degree days in summer.
Yeah, definitely. So if we start off, so obviously you're an Australian-based Spirite now. So I mean, what's it like just being following Chesterfield, but from the other side of the planet?
Yeah,
It's a bit sort of weird because you kind of
forget about it a bit. So I'll sometimes wake up on a Sunday
and go, oh, Chesterfield have played. What? I wonder how they did last night.
and it's a bit easier to forget about them when we've been doing
Doing so badly, but then this last year,
at the end of last year, I find myself I either stay up for the games or watch
watch them. But I think the weirdest thing is I'm telling everybody about Chesterfield, and just nobody wants to hear it.
and that's boring everybody.
I suppose you have the whole thing of football's not football in Australia, is it?
Well, a lot of my mates are English, but they all
Support like Liverpool, Tottenham, Chelsea, and
they'll ask
ask me how it's
Chesterfield getting on, and it's been a few years of saying, "No, we don't need to talk about that." But
yeah,
now I'm sort of showing them, and I've taken a few of them through long
nights of watching YouTube videos that
they probably
they don't care about,
but it's a good way to clear a room when you
want
want
everyone to go home.
They'll be there when the good times roll, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So how did you end up? How did you end up in Australia? Is it a work thing?
Yeah,
Yes and no. I've been here about 6 years now, just over. And I was living in London before that, and just fancied a bit of a change. I had some friends over here
been sort of harassing me to come over, and eventually thought, oh, yeah, all right, I'll give it a go. And now all
those
those
friends have moved back to England, and I'm still here.
yeah, it's just that, just stayed, and yeah, loved it. So
You're in Sydney, aren't you? Is it Sydney?
yeah, I'm in Sydney in the eastern suburbs, like down by one of the beaches there.
And they're obviously sport mad, aren't they, in Australia? Obviously, we've
They
had
are.
Aaron Downs on the podcast, and obviously he talked about how sport mad. Obviously,
Yeah, I
everyone-
think the kids grow up playing 3-4 different sports at school. Out here, there's sort of always some sport on. because the football's really like sort of bad. They play it over summer when all the other sports are off. Because if they played at the same time, they wouldn't get anyone going to them. So I go to quite a few rugby league games or Australian rules games. Got quite into that. And then in the summer, when there's nothing else on, you've got the A League, which is, it's not the best, but it gives you that fix at least.
Yeah, exactly. If we go back to when you first started supporting Chesterfield, so you're like early 30s, aren't you? So when is your era that you kind of became a Chesterfield fan?
I think I was always aware of my dad going to games, but then my first game was Wembley '95.
Right.
So I think the
Mansfield game just before that was a bit too young for a Mansfield game and a nighttime game, but I think they couldn't miss me out on going to Wembley. So started then and kind of had it pretty good, because then in '97 obviously had the cup run, and then all went a bit wrong. But I think probably from about that Division 3 season when we got promoted, I think I had a season ticket for a good few years in a row after that. So Nicky Law through to Rushbury and McFarland and all of that. And then I think I moved away from Chesterfield in about probably around like the Lee Richardson sort of time. So I moved up to Newcastle, but I was good friends with 3 or 4 Chesterfield fans up there. So we'd often come back to games and go quite a bit. And then, when I was in London, it was sort of the Paul Cook era, and there's a lot of clubs around London. So my friends would come down and we'd all just get on a train and go to Crawley or Dagenham or wherever. And then I pretty much left as soon as Paul Cook left, because I thought, oh no, that's it. We went to that game at Preston, and then I was around for the start of the next season, which I think was Dean Saunders. And the last game I went to was Millwall away, and I think we won. I think it might have been Drew Toll that had a great game. We won, and that was my last game. And I thought, great, gone out on a high here. And then the next game I got to was probably about 3 years later, and Gateshead at home, and we got hammered. And it was such a change from leaving after getting into the playoffs in League One. So that sort of Duncan through to Paul Cook sort of time is where I've been going.
So for that Bury game, you'd have been what, about 6 or something, would you?
7, 6 or 7.
Do you actually remember anything? Do you remember anything of it or not?
Yeah, I was thinking about this after you spoke to me. Actually, I remember a couple of things. One of them is I dropped my flag over Wembley Way, and I was absolutely devastated. And someone had to go and run around and pick it up for me, and I was happy again after that. I don't really remember sort of the games or the goals, but I remember like just little things around it, like people who were there and stuff like that. But that was it. I was sort of hooked then. I remember the first game I went to the next year, we lost 2-0 at home to someone, and I thought football was just winning at Wembley. So got the realities of being a Chesterfield fan after that.
Nicky Law, it is long, there's Morris, and here's a goal maybe. Yes, Chesterfield score! Marvellous moment! Chesterfield take the lead from that ploy that has worked so often. Lormer gets the goal, Chesterfield arms raised in salute, and Nicky Law's throw-in leads to the breakthrough for Chesterfield.
So who was your first Chesterfield hero? Did you have a player that stuck out for you when you started supporting them?
I think I always sort of liked the solid defenders, or like the creative midfielders. So like Mark Williams, Dyche, Paul Holland a bit further down the line. They were sort of some of the first favourites. I think probably the longest one would be like Blatherwick, who was
totally.
Me and my mates just loved him. But with all my mates over here, whenever Burnley are playing, I'm going, I've shown you that penalty he scored for us. And they're like, you've shown us. So
Yeah, I'd say they were probably the sort of earliest ones.
You'll have seen matches at Saltergate and the new ground in its various names. So what are your kind of Saltergate memories?
So I remember I was there for a few of those Carling Cup run games against like Charlton and teams like that. But some of the good ones were some early ones, like playing Man City when they came down to like Division 2, I think it was, and going to Main Road as well that year. But some of those big games like that, and the Man United friendly, I think it was Testimonial, like those one. Yeah, that was it. So those full houses, because you didn't get them very much. But yeah, I think one of my favourites was probably Bournemouth, the last game. And there was a couple of games where I think we beat Sheff Wednesday at home as well when they came down. And that was good because sort of grew up going to school with Wednesday fans and United fans. So it's good to beat teams like that.
It's funny, isn't it, over the years, how many teams we've kind of been in the same division with, and then things have gone in completely different directions. For teams like we've played have disappeared into obscurity, and others, like you say, we've been in the same division with like Man City and Bournemouth and Fulham and QPR and all those teams. It's bonkers, really, isn't it? Thinking back sometimes to the teams we played in actual league matches.
Yeah, and even thinking, because I struggle to keep up with it. I'll keep up with Chesterfield, but I struggle with other leagues. I only saw the other day Brighton playing in the Premiership, and I thought, oh God, I forgot they were in the Premiership.
Yeah,
because they were just always in our league, and like Blackpool as well a few years back.
Yeah, it's crack, isn't it? So so we kind of touched on it, but are there any properly favourite games that are like top of the tree for you?
There's there's one I watched on TV, which was the Rotherham 5-0. And I watched it on TV because we were up in Newcastle and we couldn't get down for that one. But I think we had the whole pub going for Chesterfield and people coming up and shaking hands with us afterwards and that kind of thing. But one that sort of really stands out is me and a friend went from Newcastle to Exeter for a Tuesday night game. So we flew down. My friend, he knew one of the directors at the time, so we sort of went for a few drinks with him afterwards, and he was like, "Do you want to come and see the players?" And we won 6-1, and it was tipping it down, and it was just the weird. I've never seen us score 6 before, and it was just incredible on a Tuesday night in Exeter, and we were like on the team bus at the end, just shaking hands with the players. We just didn't know what to do, and went out and had this night out in Exeter. We just couldn't believe it happened. It's just not the sort of thing we'd ever seen before at Chesterfield.
It's funny actually because I've had Jamie Winter and Peter Leuven on the podcast talking about that game, and I think Exeter got promoted that season. I think they came like second or something. I'm sure they got promoted, but the players that played in that match are all like, "Oh, that was like the typical game of those couple of seasons with Lee Richardson, in that we could beat the teams that were really good and the teams that weren't that great. We all faltered against and ended up finishing just outside the playoffs."
I think Winter scored a couple of absolute screamers, and I remember maybe Jamie Ward was in that team. It just seemed like every time we got the ball, we scored, and it was open terrace. It was raining. It was cold. It was horrible, but we were happy as anything. We wouldn't want it to be anywhere else. So yeah, that one really stands out.
Yeah, they're the best games, aren't they? The ones where you're freezing cold but it all kind of comes your way in the end. How cold does it get in Australia?
It dips below 20 sometimes.
Oh, right.
I don't know. In round where I am, like round the coast and around the city, it's you'll get sort of mid to low teens, but I don't know. It just feels colder than when it's that temperature at home. I just think it's not. There's nothing to do when it's cold. Everything's like designed for when it's sunny and you can be outside and go to the beach. So when it's cold, you just kind of sat inside thinking, "Oh, it's bloody cold."
How do you kind of keep in touch with games then? Because I suppose there's like, so it's 9 a.m. here and it's 8 p.m. there. So obviously, games you're a bit out of sync with, aren't you, when they're actually happening?
Yeah. So we go through a few different time zones because our clocks change at different times to yours. So there's a few weeks when there's a sweet spot and the games are about 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday. We've been in lockdown till about 2 weeks ago. So there was sort of nothing else to do. So it was just like a game day, just ready, waiting, and we watched the game. I've got another friend in different part of Australia that's a Chesterfield fan, so we'd sort of watch it together over Zoom. Did that a bit with friends back home when all the games were streamed last year. It was really easy, but now the games are at like 2 a.m. So even the ones when they start at midnight, which I think is more towards the end of the season, I always do them, but I can never make it to the second half. It's just too late on a weekend. So I usually just wake up and look at the Sky Sports app, and straight away I'll see how we've done. And yes, it's great to do that at the moment. There's been one game I've been out and watched live, because the problem we've got is you'll only get a Chesterfield game on if it's the only game on, because all the pubs have, like, there's a Liverpool supporters pub, there's a Tottenham supporters pub, there's like a Crystal Palace supporters pub and all that. So, and they also watch all the Champions League or the Europa League games, and even like Italian games or whatever. So if a Chesterfield game's on the same time as that, there's going to be no one else wanting to watch it. But there was one, and it was, I think it was FC United of Manchester in the FA Cup. Either them or Salford maybe, but it was a weird night, and it was on at about 5 a.m. and there's a 24-hour pub that shows all the sports. So I turned up at about 4:30 in the morning, and I was going to work late. I was really conscious that, you know, no one saw me going into a pub at that time. And I went in, and the guy was going, there's no football on. I was like, oh, there is. So he turned every TV on the top floor, which is 20 or 30 TVs, just put on Chesterfield FC United of Manchester. I resisted the urge and just sat and had a few coffees, but I was just sat there with my feet up watching it in this pub. It was great to be able to do that over here, but you know, it's not often we're on TV, and it's not often we're the only team that will be on at that time. So it's usually a case of either streaming it or following Twitter or something.
In by Talbot here. Now Sam Morsey turns well away from Thurston. Look at the space here now for Daniel Jones. Jones into Ebanks-Blake, who shrugged aside Chris Lynch here. Ebanks-Blake, Arayibi arriving on this! Inside 7 minutes, the perfect start for Chesterfield.
So you touched on it, like the standard of Australian football. What's it like?
It's sort of, the difference between good and bad players is so big, because they get a lot of players coming towards the end of their careers, or a lot of good young players coming through. So you'll get players from, I think Daniel Sturridge has just signed someone over here, and he'll probably be like the best striker in the league. But you get a lot of Australians going to play in like the Middle East or Japan or Scandinavia, and then eventually they come back here. They're usually good, but it seems players only stay here for a couple of seasons, I guess because it's so remote and so far away. And if they can get a good offer in Europe, then it's going to pay more money because they have salary cap and all that sort of stuff. So it changes so much. But I went to a few games, and like, you get a good atmosphere still, because you know, they have like the ultras and all that sort of stuff. So if you wanted a bit of football atmosphere, it's good if you can sort of not get too worried about the quality.
Can you have a beer in the stands while you're watching a game in Australia?
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
So
you don't want to be near the ultras when they score, because you'll be wearing about 30 pints by the end of it. But yeah.
And this is a good chance to go on to Jay O'Shea watch show. So you've actually been to a game, haven't you?
Yeah. So the first opportunity to go to a game after, so we've had 2 lockdowns, and in between we had about a year of doing what we want, and then kind of surprised us when it came back. and Sydney were playing Brisbane. I was like, I've not done anything. I've not been out of the house for about 9 months properly. So I thought I'll go to it. And they used to play in the middle of the city, but they're rebuilding the stadium. So now they're sort of south of the city. And I went down, and you sort of sit on this grass bank, and you've got a bar there, and the sun's coming over and everything. And it was great. And the game was 0-0, but I just loved it, just being back at sport. But yeah, I picked that one because Jay O'Shea was playing, and he's obviously a few years older now. And I don't know if this is just that game or what he normally does, but he sort of like sits just in front of the defence and just sprays the ball around now, whereas he used to be sort of right at the top end. But yeah, no, it's good to see a familiar face playing.
He must be quite enjoying it out there, because he's been out there for a few years now, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think he's still here because the new season starts in a couple of weeks. But they had Robbie Fowler as manager, and he brought loads of players over from England, and then he went back to the UK during COVID, and Brisbane just refused to bring him back out here, I think, so he just had to leave. So I think a few of them left, but he stuck it out.
Fair play.
O'Shea can have a crack from the top of the box and puts a top corner and does double that lead for Brisbane Roar.
Variation time. O'Shea, deflection, and Brisbane have the lead back against young Sutton on his debut. O'Shea, clever.
So what have you kind of made of the season so far then? So you've kind of been keeping in touch fleetingly with highlights and things. So what have you made of it?
Yeah. Oh, it's looked great from what I've seen. And a lot of my friends have started going week in, week out again. And a few people have probably been a bit more slack. So it's good. There's been so many different players coming and going. And then sort of that's what James Rowe did. And I thought, here we go again, like another brand new team. Who knows how this will end? And just seems like every player they sign is the perfect player. And from what I've seen, like I said, Gunning's a solid, like sort of leader. And then there's the couple of centre midfielders. I know a few of them are injured at the minute, but they just got that sort of calm, like passing football that reminds me like when, Jimmy Ryan was there or whatever. And obviously we're scoring goals. So it's looking good.
Yeah, I suppose if the time's working right, when we get near the end of the season, it'll kind of tie in quite well if we've got kind of a title game or something like that. Touch wood.
Yeah, even if it's 2 a.m, I'll be up and about for that. Yeah.
So I wondered if you could fly any Chesterfield player over to like have a beer with them, past or present, who would it be?
Yeah. So I was thinking about that. My first thought was Gary Roberts would be a bit of fun, but then I thought he's going to be too much. He's crazy.
Fun. Yeah.
So I thought, maybe someone like Tommy Lee, who seems like a real down to earth lad. He was another favourite player for obviously like about 10 years. I reckon he'd be a good lad to come and have a few beers down by the beach with.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he was a top bloke when he was on. Really top guy. If we kind of pick a bunch of favourite players over the past, however long you've been supporting them from like the very final days, who, if you could like make up a team, which kind of players would you have in it?
Yeah, me and my mates have done this. So I think we usually go Billy Mercer in goal. It's tough on Tommy, but he was good. Blathers, Deitch centre half, Shane Nicholson left back.
Yeah.
Don't know who's going right back. Probably got to say Jamie Hewitt, but it's not like the most exciting choice. Maybe like Tom Curtis and Morsey. But I'd like to have like Phil Robinson in there. I can't think about wingers. Struggling there. I think like Ryan Williams was good. I can't see it. Yeah, Ryan Williams and Parrish were good, but I don't know if they'd be I can't think who I'd have there. Maybe like a young Kevin Davis on the wing or something.
Yeah.
And up front, I think Jack up there, obviously, and it's another tough one because there's so many good players. Like, I kind of want to say Reevesy, but he probably wasn't our most prolific striker, but he's just a bit of a legend.
Oh, Reevesy is such a funny guy. So funny.
Yeah. I reckon that'd be a decent team. But then a lot of them, there's not many players from like that Paul Cook team, and they were like our best team. So I don't know. It's just like those ones from the 90s and early 2000s were sort of the first ones I remember watching and liking. So they've kind of stuck with us, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny, isn't it, how you can sometimes have the teams that were not the best teams in terms of league performances, but were kind of some of the most entertaining in some ways. Like I loved like the Roy McFarland era when we had like people like Chris Brandon and Glyn Hurst and even like, you know, a lot of the fullbacks around then, like Alex Bailey and people. I kind of loved that era. But obviously we kind of above our weight in that era. But
yeah, it was. I don't know. I liked that team. They weren't like the most talented side, but you know, we got a lot of good wins. We did well, like for a long time with Roy, and had good cup runs and just a good, solid, like hard-working team.
Yeah, there seemed like a bunch of players you could like just go and have a beer with, didn't they? They just seemed like a bunch of people. Yeah,
proper team.
So, have you got any favourite Chesterfield shirts?
Oh, it's a good one. So the ones, there's some classics like from before my time, like the Adidas ones or like the Colite ones that I like. From my time, so I've got that end of an era one that's got Saltergate sort of like imprinted in it.
Yeah, that's good.
I actually really liked the first season at the B2 Net that had like the Spire, and I quite like when they're just plain blue and then a plain white away shirt. We don't mess around with it too much. But I think the green ones are always the classics as well. I think the one where we won at Oldham in the Johnston's Paint Trophy in that green shirt. Green. I think it just looks good, the green ones.
Down by his side, just at the back of his elbow. Oh, a mix-up! A costly one, Leicester's in, it's bundled across the line! Now the celebrations can really start! What a calamitous mix-up between Mvoto and Cisak! What a costly one as far as Oldham are concerned, and what a priceless goal! A ticket to Wembley, laid on a plate for Chesterfield.
Great, super. Well, thanks for coming and having a chat.
No worries. I think I've bored enough people out here with Chesterfield stories.
I bet it's nice just to have someone to sympathise with Chesterfieldness.
It's a unique culture to have. So.